Hey guys, Terry here with the Forest Farm Project. Today we're going to do a portion of our 50-hour maintenance on this Kubota B2650. We've had it a few months now and we've been running it pretty steady. So in this video, under the service intervals on maintenance, we are going to change the oil and change the oil filter. Let's get started. So we've decided to go ahead and use the Kubota parts and oil. You know, we want to meet their specifications, and the easiest way is just buy their stuff. Maybe a little more expensive. You can find cheaper stuff. It might be cheaper. There's been some studies done on these filters, and Kubota puts out a very good filter, and it's pretty heavy, and you can tell the difference in some of them. There'll be a lot of lighter weight. There's not as much material in them, but apparently this is a good filter. We're just going with Kubota. So fortunately on this B2650, the oil filter is very accessible, and you can use a wrench like this. There's a lot of different ones out there. This one's made by Channel Lock. Brian found it one day when we were up in Michigan on a vacation, and we fell in love with it. It really does well. You can adjust it for different size filters, and it really grabs the side of that filter and turns it off there pretty good. So when you can get to them, sometimes you need one of those that goes on the end. This time, because we can access it, we're using this. So let's get started. Okay, so let's get this drain pan under here, and you probably want to keep a couple of rags around just in case you have a little oily mess. I'm going to pull this little plug out so it'll fill up, pop that out so it'll take air. As you can see, the oil pan forms a U shape over the drive shaft, so you're going to have to take and drain two different plugs there. You have to drain both sides. Drain one side until it's completely empty, put that plug back, then drain the other side. If you try and drain both, you're going to have a bigger chance of oil spilling everywhere. So I would just do one at a time. Leave the dipstick in the engine and leave the oil filler cap on the engine, and that will help form a vacuum so that the oil will drain slowly until you get the plug out. Then you can stand up, either pull the dipstick or remove the cap, and the oil is going to drain much faster. But you don't want it to drain fast while you're pulling the screw, so that's kind of a handy little tip. And let's see, got her in the reverse position. I'm going to drain that side first just because I'm looking at it. All right, got it broke loose. Pretty simple. And here we go. Oh, yeah, that was messy. Oh, Lord have mercy. And that's not much oil. You see how that's not draining much? You stay here and film that, Brian. I'm going to open that cap. Any difference?
Oh yeah, huge difference.
So we just tried, we've got the stick pulled out right now, and that's allowing the air to flow so that the oil can run out. And then I took the cap loose, the filler cap, didn't make any difference. So just pulling that stick up, that way you're not leaving your filler cap off while you're doing all this work till you're ready to put the oil in. I'd hate to have something fall in that engine. So we've got the first half of this drain pan drained, and you always want to take your plug, whoop. And you want to take your plug and wipe the grease off. These rubber gloves are nice for keeping your hands clean, but man, it's hard to hold on to stuff.
You want to wipe the oil off, not the grease.
Yeah, the oil. You want to wipe the oil off. Make sure it's nice and clean. Make sure that you wipe the area that it goes good and clean. You don't want to get any dirt up in your oil pan. And screw this bad boy back up there. Go ahead and tighten that thing up so we don't forget. It wasn't real hard to loosen, so I'm not going to get it really, really hard and tight. Pretty snug. You kind of feel it giving. Now we're going to drain the other half. Okay, so again, you want to take your drain plug, the second one on this particular tractor. Make sure it's good and clean. Clean the threads, clean the whole thing off. No dirt. You do not want to get dirt in your engine. So wipe that area where the plug goes in off and screw this bad boy back up in there. And get the wrench and tighten it up. And you don't want to go super tight. Just get it good and snug. That's something you can check later and make sure that it's good. I always like to reach up there and wipe it off one more time, because sometimes a little oil gets on those threads and around that screw, and I want to come back and look and see, has it been leaking? Well, if there's oil there, I don't know, is that some that I left there when I was working on it, or is that some that ran out since I worked on it? So if I wipe it off, I know there's nothing there. If I see oil, there's a problem. Maybe run it a day or something and then check it. All right, let's move up to the top. All right, well, it's time to change the oil filter, and it's located right here on the left side of the tractor, and it's not too hard to get to. It's pretty good. Get that thing moving. And it should be ready to come off. You're gonna get a little oil on the engine and on the frame there, or the frame stuff, but just have to wipe it down a little bit. Must be 400 threads on that thing. All right. And I kind of look in here, just see, do I see any debris or anything? You never know what might be going on in that engine. Look pretty good. So you might notice it's a little bit brighter out here than it was a while ago. We got a service call, had to go do some work, and while we were out, this wrench that we thought was going to be great for this application ended up being, it crunched the filter down too much. It was hard to get it out of there. There's not a lot of room to work. It looks like there's more room than there is. So we went and bought this filter wrench that just slides on the end of the filter. They work pretty good, and it's 80 millimeter is what fits this Kubota filter. And then you can grip this by hand and tighten it, and this has to be turned in like till it's snug, and then another half a turn. You can use a wrench on it if you got one in there that won't come out and you need to bust it loose, because sometimes they do get seized up after a while. But anyway, I think this is a better choice. It's going to work, so you can get straight into it. We'll wipe this thing off a little bit just to make sure it's good and clean. This is new, so you don't have to worry too much about it, but when you get an older tractor, there's going to be some mud and dirt around that thing, and you want to get that off of there. You don't want that getting in your engine. We're going to put a little bit of oil on this filter just to make it seal up good, because that's what they say to do. And I think it makes it spin a little easier. The rubber doesn't catch the steel and grab. It helps it slip as you're torquing it down. And let's set this up here out of the way. Alrighty, now let's run this thing on here. I did wipe it off, okay. And if this was all dirty under here, all up in here, if it was muddy and it's older, you might have some dirt. When you bring this filter in, you don't want to bang into all that dirty stuff. Keep it level where it's going in. Pull the hose out of your way a little bit and get up in there. Try not to touch anything and get dirt on it. So just line that baby up if I can. Can't quite get up there. That wrench is getting in my way right now. There we go. So run that up there freehand, around and around and around and around, and a lot of threads. When you feel it make contact, they say go another half a turn. So I've got the numbers going almost up and down, a little bit at an angle, so I need to bring them over that way somewhere, about a half a turn. Let's say a half a turn actually needs to bring them down. Yeah, that should do it, shouldn't it? All right, so let's put the oil in it. You can't really get down here with the oil jug. There's just not enough room. So you're gonna need a funnel. This thing's, I don't know what it is. Probably, that's over a foot, 18 inches or so. Hadn't measured it. And that helps tremendously. This is the right jug, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so let's put some oil in this bad boy. Got to be a little careful. I pulled the dipstick back up over here again, out to just let some air flow, because you never know if this thing was to clog off the vent holes and it just might not drain good. We want it to drain down into the engine so it don't come up out of this hole we're putting it in. Keep an eye on it, make sure it's going in there. Yeah, it's going in pretty good. And that's good enough. I generally let all these drain into a container, and then when I need a little bit of oil, I use it. I mean, there might be a tablespoon in there yet. So the manual says to put 4.2 quarts into this tractor. They don't exactly have it measured in 0.2s. So we know that it's like 800 here. It's up to about 900 if you went by the scale, maybe 1,000. So we're going to go down to about 800, somewhere between there and maybe 750, and check the oil and make sure it's right. Ultimately, you want a dipstick that has it between the safe zone. So regardless of what it actually says in the manual, I think we'll be good though. So let's see. See how much that was. It's still way up there. I'm down to 800. Would that be milliliters?
Yeah.
And I'm going to go ahead and check the oil on that because that's probably about right. We might be a tiny bit low. We can add some more, not a big deal. So at that point, we're going to have to put our cap back on it. Don't want to crank it up with that off. I'm going to go ahead and pull the dipstick out. One thing I see a lot of people doing, they check their oil and they're just ramming and fighting with that dipstick. It's flexible this way on the skinny side, but on the fat side it don't flex. You'll bend it. Well, you got to look at how that dipstick comes out. If it's turned this way in that engine when you pull it out, you can't turn it this way. That's 90 degrees. That's going to make it want to do all that. You want it to flex because that tube generally curves down into the engine. So if I put it in here, I got it turned the wrong way there. It don't want to go in there because I got it turned this way. When I turn it back the way it goes, it'll go right down in there with no problem. So always make sure how is that thing oriented when you take it out and put it back the same way. So let's see how much oil we have. It says a little bit over full, but when you crank it, some of that's going into the filter. So I think we're probably good. Well, we've let the tractor run a while. We let it cool down, let the oil drain back down. When you initially fill it up, the dipstick's going to read over full a little bit. Once you run it the first time, it's going to put oil into the filter, probably some into the pump and maybe some tubes in there, which lowers the overall level reading on this dipstick. The oil's still in the engine, it's just moved around in a couple places once you started the engine and in the initial time after the oil change. So let's see where we're at now that we've run it. We are right exactly on the full mark, so that's where we want to be. So let me put this dipstick back here. So we put a full 1 gallon jug of oil into the tractor, and then we took an additional quart-sized jug, and it was way up high above the 800 mark, somewhere in there, and you know there's no numbers up there, but we came down to probably 775 milliliters if you use a milliliter side, and that topped it off to the correct level. So that's just gives you a little bit of a guide to go by. So if you like what you saw, give us a big thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, share us with your friends, and check back often. We got a lot coming, guys. Thanks.